My history with koi goes back about 38 years. I found them at a tropical fish store that is no longer in existence, Martin's Aquarium. It was pretty famous while it operated, and I went there probably for 15, 20 years, the tropical fish store, and collected every type of tropical fish from freshwater through to saltwater. One day I went in and they had built a small pond on the floor, and they had these larger fish in them with all different colors. And I was curious what they were, and I found out that they could live outdoors, and they're called koi, and they're all different colors and patterns. And I really was intrigued by the fish. So I decided to start taking care of them and trying to grow them at my home. And there was very, very little information in those days about how to care for them. There was maybe a book, which was not very good. And I went through a process of killing many, many fish over many years. But even though most normal human beings would have been discouraged and left the hobby, it just drove me on and deeper into it. Finally, I got the hang of it, and I found Koi USA, which was starting up in California, the magazine, and that started to give me some better information. And then I discovered that there was a real koi world in California. Not only a koi world of hobbyists and dealers, but there are also people making koi, producing koi in California. There was three farms that I had identified. And I'd go out there. I tried to make as many trips each year to California as I could possibly figure out how to do. And I'd go out and buy 20, 30 fish at a time from a producer, and bring them back and try to learn something from growing them, and then started to sell them as a hobbyist and from my home. And that slowly but surely led me into bigger and bigger things. And eventually a group of us got together, about 6 of us, and founded the MAKC. I'm not sure how many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, or a little less. And that, you know, was very satisfying to spread information, and it also helped me to sell the fish that I was bringing in. Ultimately, and finally, I found Japan and started going back and forth to Japan and hooking up with other dealers. That was not totally satisfying. And finally, I got to know Nigel Caddick in England, who publishes Nishiki-Goi International. And he told me Matsunosuke Toshio Sakai was coming to give his first lecture outside of Japan. And he was coming to London, and Nigel invited me to come along. It was going to be at Peter Waddington's dealership. I went there, and my good fortune was that Matsunosuke had with him a Japanese young college graduate who spoke English. And I was able to make a connection with Matsunosuke through that interpreter. And that became my introduction to the best koi in Japan and to the most creative breeder there, who I feel very strongly is unique in that respect. He doesn't follow the crowd or try to do what everyone is doing, maybe a little better. He actually goes about trying to create better fish and systems. So, and he loves to teach. He is truly our mentor on this farm. I then opened a store in Philadelphia, which we operated for about 3 years, and became disillusioned with a retail store because I was always interested in better and better fish, and there was no place to put them, and there was no place to keep them. So I might buy a small, good quality fish in Japan, bring it back, and being indoors for a month or two, the colors would go down. It would look like a cheap fish. I wouldn't even be able to sell it for anything like I had bought it for. So I decided, and I'd played around with breeding fish in my backyard, and it was fairly simple to get them to spawn. So I decided that, well, if you have good genetics, there is absolutely no reason why you can't produce good fish in the United States. It was just logical. You could do it with dogs, cats, birds. You could do it with fish, because the conditions on this farm are really not too different than they are in Japan. The weather is plus or minus the same. They go through the same seasons. They have snow. It gets hot and humid. It's pretty similar. We have clay. We have water. I think in many respects, my farm is much, much easier to work than the typical farm in Niigata, built on the side of mountains, where you have to go up and down those mountains and move the fish up and down hills. That is really, really difficult. And also, because they're built on the side of the mountains, the shapes of the ponds is not perfect. Here we can create our perfectly rectangular ponds, which makes everything easier. a year or two if we grow them.
This is clownfish.
What's this, man?
This is one from an auction 2 years ago.
Is it somebody's?
Yeah, lease.
Is this? How old? Oh, beautiful.
4-year-old, young son.
Look how beautiful that is.
That's soon. What's that?
The size of this.
That does look good. You coming up out here? Yeah.
Whose is this? Is it?
Turn it around so I can get it.
Woo.
Wow. Throw it back in the mud.
Yeah, it's no good. I think you
Might
should
assume
give it
he
to
really
me.
came up on it over the summer, didn't he?
That's a throwback.
Wow, Harry Price. Did you pluck those shiny scales out?
I think we're safe. Female parent getting rid.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Beautiful.
Glad to see these come out alive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Japanese bread. Ours are better. Some.
You don't show a parent.
This is the one we got from Martin.
Yeah. Auction fish.
I can't believe it's the same fish. Oh my God. There's a few babies. Yeah, yeah. So this is one of our oldest fish.
Yeah. In the first year.
First good year of growth.
Still a long body.
Good.
Just a bit. Able to stop. Yeah. This one's very light.
Mr. Sakai encouraged me to create the farm. In the early days, I think he was somewhat disappointed in what he saw here, because we had great difficulty in starting this farm up and getting it right. And the first few years, we really suffered. In the last 2 years, though, things have come together. Our construction has slowed down almost to a stop, and we're becoming much more orderly and disciplined. And that's what this business, the production farming business, really takes, is order and discipline, and a good eye, that's for sure.
What are you personally getting out of this farm? I mean, what are you enjoying about the whole process? I mean, it's obviously a huge undertaking.
Yes. I can tell you what I'm not getting is profit. However, I'm very hopeful that we will soon break even and show a profit. We are satisfying my number one demand or interest, and that is that we are producing high quality fish. My theory was, based upon my many years going to Japan and understanding there was no way the Japanese breeders were selling me good 1-year-old fish. They were selling me the discards, so to speak, the ones that they didn't want to grow any larger. I could force the sale. I could force them by persistence to put a price on their better young fish. But the prices were so high, and I didn't really understand why. I do better now. But the prices were so high for each individual fish, it was virtually impossible for a dealer to buy this young fish, ship it to the United States, and sell it at a profit. And I had an experience with Mr. Sakai, Toshio Sakai, Matsunosuke, where we had seined one of his concrete ponds in the greenhouse that was remote from his normal office. And there was about 1,100 fish in there. And he hadn't completely culled the high quality fish out of this 1,100 fish. So we seined the entire pond and we went through every single fish. I had a chance to look at every single fish. But he uncharacteristically stood right next to me. And as soon as, once in a while, a fish would come into the bowl in front of me and his hand would dart out, grab it, and throw it right back into the pond. Well, I knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't want to give me a price because it was going to be high, and I might think he was trying to take advantage of me. I understand, and he didn't really want to sell that fish because it might be worth $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in 2 or 3 years. Why sell it for a few $100s or even $1,000? So I saw one in the net, the seine net, and when it came up into the bowl, I grabbed it and threw it into the bowl. And his employees and he himself said, "Oh, Zaritsky-san, good Sanke, good Sanke." And of course, he is the master Sanke breeder in Japan. Every breeder that breeds Sanke, virtually everyone uses Matsunosuke Sanke bloodlines. So after I picked out about 100 out of the 1,100 fish to bring back to the United States, he then went through all the fish and sorted them according to quality. This is different than most of the other breeders who just, whatever you have in a pond, these wholesale ponds, that's the price. In any event, so he sorts them out and we get to the last one and the prices are going up with the numbers going down because the quality is always the smallest number, the high quality. We get to this last one and I figured out how much he wanted in dollars. It was $1,400 for this 5-inch fish. So I threw it back. He convinced me that it wasn't for me with the pricing. Well, for that very reason, I decided by making a farm in the United States, I could create something unique for the American hobbyist. A chance for them to actually buy tategoi, first-class fish, that no one, that they wouldn't have a chance to do whether they go to Japan or stay in the United States. There's none being brought in from Japan, no young ones, Tosai, 1-year-olds. And almost no one produces them in the United States. There's just a handful of us trying to. And my logic dictated that if I could bring in good enough parents, we should be able to produce real tategoi in the United States and give American hobbyists an opportunity to buy real fish. It's confirmation, is what really gets to me. And there's a couple of ways a fish can be built that is first class. They can have a very high back or a slightly lower and a longer, slender body. They can be very heavy set or a longer, slender body. We're talking about females. I like them both, actually. I don't prefer one over the other, but when those big bodies come out of my ponds, and the high quality blacks, sumi, and the high quality reds, beni, that is absolutely vindication of my theory that it is possible to produce first-class fish in the United States. This year, in the last 12 months, many of our Tosai and Nisai have won top awards across the country. Their brothers and sisters and them, as they grow into 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, they're going to continue to grow, and some of them will get better and better and better. And some of them, I believe, will ultimately challenge the very expensive fish coming in from Japan. I am absolutely certain. I'm not saying that we will produce the best fish in the world. I am not making that claim. Hiroshima Sakai, Momotaro, Toshio Sakai, Matsunosuke, and a handful of others have definitely better breeding stock. They're super. However, there's only a handful of really fantastic fish produced every year by any of them. And those are so pricey. The two Englishmen paid $150,000 for the fish that won the All Japan show this year. So that gives you an indication of how rare they are. The most important thing for me now that I have, to my satisfaction, and hopefully to the rest of the country eventually, my satisfaction is that we can produce the fish and we know how to take care of them and grow them. And it's not that we're at perfection, we are not. We'll continue to work at it and improve each year and learn the hard way as we go. Profitability is vital, and it's not because I personally need dollars from this farm for me to live. I don't. I have my other business. But we have 4 college graduates working this farm, and they are working their tail off 6 days a week, most weeks of the year. And these guys and gals deserve to make some money and to get some real benefit out of this farm. And that's the second part of the goal. The first part we've achieved to my satisfaction, to Matt's. By the way, I want to talk a little bit about Matt. This is another good thing that Nigel Caddick did for me. For a while I did a little business with him and did some advertising, although that really didn't pay off for me. What really did pay off for me was my relationship with him, first bringing me in to meet Toshio Sakai, which was absolutely vital. The second thing was I had asked him, I could not find anyone in the United States that could create this farm. And I called Nigel on the phone and asked him if he knew any young fella who would come over here and work with me to build a koi farm and a real business. And he got back to me about a week or two later, and he said, I think I have the perfect fellow for you, Matt McCann, who's the son of Tony McCann, a very well-known hobbyist in England. Matt's been in it since he was 7 years old. As a child, he grew up with koi. Then he went through the university and learned the science of keeping fish and water quality, and then on to parasites. And then finally, he really finished his education here in the United States with me, not because of me, well, indirectly because of me, but through my relationship with Matsunosuke, who has really taken Matt under his wing and really gives him factual information, which is difficult to get from a professional. And Ross also has been learning. So Ross is quickly climbing the ladder of knowledge and skills. He can now handle fish. His eye is moving right up. And Matt's eye is fantastic now. Matt, in my opinion, and obviously opinion is opinion, and anybody can disagree, I think he's the #1 koi person in the United States. In my view, from a standpoint of everything, from the science, but most importantly from the eye, starting with fish at 1.25 inches and going up. Matt has that excellent eye that gets better and better and better as he sees what he has chosen and watches it perform. So, and he's an honorable guy, as all for the folks are. So they're dependable, they're trustworthy, and they really know their stuff. Well, the importing, as most of the hobbyists know now, is going to be somewhat restricted. The top breeders who have not had any disease problems for the last couple of years will continue to export. I think it'll affect mainly the lowest end of the fish coming from other parts of Asia, and maybe Israel, we'll see. But I don't think it's really going to impact too much. From a standpoint of America, I think one thing that I hope I'm contributing is to take away the onus of domestically produced, because there's been a terrible, well, and probably earned by the normal domestic breeder. There's only a handful of us out there that are really trying to breed high quality fish, which takes a special effort and an extra expense to get good quality breeders. But my feeling is, if I can prove it on a larger scale, there'll be people following and copying, which is fine. I mean, that's the nature of business, and it's the nature of America. If somebody does it and can make it work, other people will follow.
Do you see your operation exporting?
Europe is a possibility for sure. I would say it's possible. We do sell fish to Canada. That's as far as we've gone so far. We're still getting known in the United States. That is our primary. This is a big country, and if you add up all the high-end hobbyists in this country, there's a good number of them. It's not giant numbers, but it's a good number. We're starting to get interest from them, as you can tell from the people that are here today, and others who are buying, has started to buy from us. It's not that they've stopped buying their fish from other dealers or breeders, but they've started to buy our fish. My feeling is that will grow because it's cheaper to buy them from us. They have a chance to buy real tategoi, and not when they're 2 or 3 years old, when they're getting pricey, but when they're still tosai. This is, I can tell you this, I've been in business virtually all my life, and I develop projects, we build, we buy in other cities and states and even in Canada. This is the most difficult, by a huge margin, thing that I've ever done. Now, we have made, and I say we have made every mistake you can make, plus virtually every greenhouse you walk into is in its second or third iteration. So every time we change it, that means we have really failed in our attempt to do whatever we wanted to do. Hopefully, we're learning. We are definitely learning from all of our mistakes, but mistakes are very, very costly. And if I were trying to do this as a startup business on my own without some substance behind me, I would have been put out of business a while ago.
How closely is Toshio Sakai watching you? I mean, you have obviously been using his genetics over here in the States. How closely is he watching you, and is there any possibility down the road that he's going to want to take some of what you've produced here back to re-enter it into his line? That
is a dream of mine, and it is actually possible. It's just that he's not spending enough time here. Actually, he hasn't been here on the farm for a while. However, we have seen him every year. He does come to Philadelphia, which is close by, for a doctor's situation. And we do get an opportunity. We're in contact with him. And when we have a problem that we can't figure out, we contact him, and he gives us good information. My feeling is he will be very proud when he comes next. We may be able to get him here in February to give a seminar, and he might even bring some fish over to demonstrate, maybe demonstrate with our fish. But I think he's going to be very pleased. We had some fish at the Sacramento show, and we sent a couple of Sankeys specifically for him to look at. Ross was there. Matt was here at the MAKC show. And he bought the 2 fish that we liked and thought were special, and he gave them to Agnes. And we're going to grow them for her. But he was impressed with those 2 fish. I think to continue in the path that we are going, we have another greenhouse to redo, and that will give us a very good space to bring all of our fish in, even our wholesale fish, and have them sorted by size for springtime. We'll have that partially this year, but not wholly. There's still more ponds that we can finish on this property. We have a number that could be added. We probably will have to continue to add as our good fish get more plentiful and we grow more and more of them. We need more larger ponds.